Hey, good morning everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss Pre-Market Report for Friday, June 16th, 2017. I'm Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. Here's a look at the daily time frame of the ES. We're currently holding in a very clear trading range. A nice little box is formed above the previous month's close into 43. Half that range basically has taken the last 2 to 2.5 weeks and has stayed within that little box. Eventually, we will likely see expansion from this range, but right now, from a swing perspective, not a whole lot to do at the moment. Bulls here holding the previous week's close, and even down in the 2400 to 2404 half. Should price get into this area, bulls still likely to defend there. Any failure to hold 2400 likely rotates price back toward 2344 half to 2353. So that's kind of the path right now. We'll see how this thing continues to progress. If we take a look at this on an intraday basis, you'll notice how narrow the range is intraday so far. Price has rallied back to where? Right back to the FOMC key level, 2436 quarter, went 2 ticks above it, dropped back below, and it's becoming resistance. Overall, very narrow range that is formed at these highs. Not a whole lot to do from there either at this time. But as I mentioned before, when price moves away from that FOMC key level and then finds rejection, there's a tendency to come right back to it, and this is exactly what's happened here recently. We have a very narrow range, not much to go on at this time, but any push beyond 36s here challenges 40 to 43s. Failure to get above 36 quarter likely rotates this thing back to weekly VWAP. That's about 29. All right, let's take a look here at gold futures. Here's a look at gold right now, trading a very narrow range from 52 up to 59. We talked before that a likely decline would push price back into 59s to 60, and that has played out. So we were looking for a rejection of these highs. It came much quicker than expected, and the push right into 59 occurred. That's composite VPOC. Price is now holding just below that level in a very tiny range. And so not a whole lot to go on just now either, other than this thing continues to trend downward. Since we are trading around composite VPOC, it can be quite hairy, as this thing perhaps can chop back and forth around that level before the next clear move materializes. So be very careful of gold around the zone. Obviously, with the rejection at these highs, the flow still is to the downside. We could be challenging the lower edge of this range, perhaps in the 29s, so we could be looking at more downside here ahead, but we could see some chop along with that downside movement, so be cautious in this zone. Taking a look here at the intraday, again, that 59 is very important. If price were to push above 59s here, since price is held below it here for the better part of a couple days, this is an important zone right here. So we got a lot of market participants that are below it. A break above 59s could spark a return back towards 68s. So this is going to be a big time level to watch here in the near term. Let's take a look here at crude oil. Crude showing some strength here pre-market. If you look at the higher time frame chart, what you'll notice is that prices rolled down very, very nicely. At the beginning of the week, what I mentioned, and this was also part of last week's analysis, we got great 2-day highs here in a downtrending market, and if price goes above those highs and fails to hold, we talked about 46.30, that would suggest a move downward into 44.32 and 43.75, and so that's kind of what's played out throughout the week. We haven't quite gotten into 43.75s, but we did get to the 44.32s, and now we're bouncing yet again. We're just beyond the previous session's high. Again, another opportunity to perhaps watch for a trap and drop. But overall, this has been flowing to the downside. We are now at a significant area in the chart. Anything in the 43s is a zone that has been defended by bulls over the last many months here. And so the expectation is still that if price drops into this zone, we will likely see some sort of rejection signature that can get us back toward 48.75 VPOC and perhaps even a little higher into 50. So right now, still watching for that rejection, still a downtrending market until we find it. If we dropped into the intraday time frame, What you'll notice here is that price has rallied overnight. We've gotten a push back above the previous session's high, which is right there, that white line, and we're right above it. So right here, if there's any failure to hold above this 44.80, we could be looking at a rotation back to value, back toward the lower edge of the range, and perhaps a new low. So keep an eye on that zone right there, any failure to hold it. Now, staying above that level with a sloping VWAP suggests more strength, and again, you have a key level above it, 45. Beyond that level starts to open up some additional targets, including weekly VWAP back toward 45.60. Lastly, we talked about ZB yesterday, just because it was right at a zone that is a major inflection point. It's a do or die area. Are we going to see further expansion through the top of the range, or are we going to fail like we did last time? And what I mentioned the previous session was after this big expansion day, you tend to see a day where you come back toward the mid, and then that's where bulls want to defend it. So it's very similar to what happened the last time. Again, what happened last time was price failed to hold the mid of the breakout day, and then the thing started to break down. We're not at that point just yet, but if there's any failure to hold 155.01s, that could spark the move back towards, say, 153.02 and maybe even lower. Holding above that zone gives a good shot at attempting to see expansion to the upside. Again, I mentioned 160 could be ahead, 163. Whenever this thing is ready to start making its move through the LVN, we have clear and open space above. Not sure we're ready to do it just yet, but we're right at the precipice there. Very clear that the market is attempting to. We'll see what happens. Watch that 155.01. All right, that's it for now. Let's see how this thing plays out heading into the rest of the session. Good luck, trade well, and happy Friday.